Hello, this is Pastor Farrell from St. Matthew Lutheran in Lancaster, and we are entering Lent 2 this weekend here at the church, Saturday at 5 p.m. and Sunday at 10 a.m. And the scriptures for this week are John chapter 3, probably the most familiar scriptures in all of the Gospels. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Very familiar. So in the beginning of the chapter of John chapter 3, we see Nicodemus, who was a ruler of the Jews. He was a Pharisee. And I always thought that Nicodemus, growing up as I was learning the Bible and studying the Bible and being taught, I always thought Nicodemus was an enemy of Jesus, like the other Pharisees were viewed as an enemy, always trying to trip Jesus up, but Nicodemus was actually a friend of Jesus. You see him later on in the Gospel of John, where he comes to Jesus' defense and says he needs a fair trial. And then when Jesus dies, he brings myrrh to embalm Jesus for the grave. So we see Nicodemus, and he asks the questions that we all want to ask, probably of Jesus. He asked, how in the world can these things be? Jesus talks about some pretty radical things. He talks about how that you must be born again. And so Nicodemus is asking that question, how in the world can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? This doesn't make sense. And Jesus uses imagery. Jesus, who is God incarnate, God in the flesh, uses imagery from our everyday lives. He talks about being born. He talks about water. He uses wind. The wind listeth, and you don't know where it comes from or where it's going. So is it with the Spirit, he says. So Jesus talks about these very earthy things. Jesus was God in the flesh, as I said. Jesus had hands. Jesus had feet. Jesus moved the baptismal waters of the Jordan, as we talked about a couple weeks ago. And Jesus was hungry. He was famished after fasting for 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. So Jesus knew these very real things. But we also know that Jesus knew, and what he was trying to teach us, that God can do anything. And God, we find out in the Creed, we quote in the Creed that God is God of the seen and unseen. So God can do the impossible, the things that we can't get our hands on. We are reminded of our baptisms in the water, in the font, in the sanctuary. And we are reminded that God works in the very simple things in life, like water and the bread and the wine at the table. God is in our everyday lives. God is here. God is with us. God incarnate. Jesus walked the earth. And God is with us today in all that we do. And so God, who can do the impossible, in John chapter 1, it says that to them who believe in him, he gives them power to become the sons of God, even them who believe in his name. So God can make the impossible happen. God can adopt us as God's children. So as we walk our journeys in life and we meet illness, and we meet job loss, and we meet transitions in life, maybe in the way we're going to live, maybe in housing, maybe we see those realities where we cannot live on our own maybe anymore. Those tough questions that families face, and those tough things, the loss of a loved one, those things that we have to deal with in life. A lot of times we're like Nicodemus. How can these things be? How can God be with us? How can God be in our lives? But God who does the impossible, God finds a way, and God connects us through Jesus Christ, and God is with us. Come worship with us this weekend. Come share the meal with us. Come sing with us. Come be with us here at St. Matthew, and let us study deeper what it means to be connected and reconnected with God, and how that in our daily baptisms, God washes our sins away, gives us forgiveness, and God gives us a renewed life each and every day. And God is with us in all of those times. My prayer is for you today that you realize that God is with you in this very moment. God bless you.